Now then, an avocado. Look, what could be simpler? We have just got two halves of an avocado, one with a stone in and one without a stone in. What can I say? It couldn't be easier. We've just got a couple of ovals with a couple more ovals inside. You can see that the light is coming from the left because it's casting a highlight on this stone in the left-hand one. But interesting on this, we've got a convex shape there, so the light's over there. Here we've got a concave hole, so the light's on the opposite side. And that tells us that that is indeed concave and this is indeed convex. That simple effect of the light highlight being on the opposite sides gives our brain the information it needs to determine the shape of what is going on there. What I'm going to do today is we're going to try and paint these with just the three primary colors as well, just a red and a blue and a yellow. And we're going to create the rest of the colors by combining the three. So let's have a go. Right. Now I've got a palette today in which I've squeezed the remnants of some tube watercolors. You know, you can get them in pans and you can get them in tubes. These were in tubes, but I've just squeezed them in here. Then they go dry, but that's absolutely fine. All you need to do to activate them is just give them a scrub with some water, and you're back to where you are. You need to be, well, you're back with liquid color. Anyway, I'll show you. I'll explain more in a second. Let's grab yourself a sketchbook and grab yourself a clean page. And let's have a look, see what we've got. Let's see if I can fire this in. There. Okay, I'm just going to sketch these very basic shapes out. Two egg shapes, really, aren't they? I'm going to maybe do one on this side and one on this side. Doesn't matter if they're a bit wobbly because, in fact, they are wobbly. So I'm just going to take my line. In fact, they can be very wobbly. Some of these are quite crinkly, aren't they? Even got a little kink down there, look. One. And almost its mirror image on the other side here. Looking a bit like oysters. Oysters would be nice, wouldn't they, to draw? Okay, we're all following along. What could be easier? Let's get that stone in there, which takes up approximately that much space. And the hole that it's left here, which takes up about that much, well, it takes up exactly the same amount of space, doesn't it? The hole where it was. There. Okay. So that's enough drawing. What I'm going to do now is we're going to paint. So grab the paints. Now, as I said, I'm just going to use the three primary colours, which are obviously yellow, red and blue. Now you're thinking, why has he got two yellows and two reds and two blues? Well, and you'll find these in most basic paint sets. You have a cool yellow and a warm yellow, a cool red and a warm red, and a cool blue and a warm blue. Now, to cut a long story short, with those 6 colours, in theory, you can make every colour under the sun. There are cool and hot versions, because if you wanted to make a very lime acidic green, you'd have to use a cool yellow and a cool blue, and that'll make a very nice lime green. Whereas if you tried to make a lime green with a warm yellow and a warm blue, you'd come a cropper and you'd just end up with like an olive colour. But anyway, that's a theory for another lesson. let's have a go at creating all the colors that we see here with these 3 primary colors. So you'll need a tissue, because what you don't want to do is contaminate. We're going to be dancing around between these colors, and you don't really want to contaminate your yellow with the blues, which is very easy to. It's very easy to end up with a green as soon as you start moving between the 2 colors, especially yellow. Very easy to get it contaminated. So I'm getting a little puddle, actually a substantial puddle, and I'm starting off with this cool yellow, lemon yellow, and I'm making a wash of lemon yellow. But as you can see, it's not just a flat yellow, there's all kinds of things going on in here. And what is interesting is the way that the green creeps in from the side. So what we're going to do to achieve that is we're going to put this yellow wash down, and then while it's still wet, we're going to go round that edge with that green. And because the surface is still going to be wet, it's going to leach in, it's going to bleed in and create this lovely soft transition between green and yellow. So I've got my lemon yellow there. I've spritzed all these. I said they dry off if you leave them in the palette. So I've given them all a little spritz with my little aerosol thingy. And I'm not going to put a solid lemon yellow in there. I'm going to maybe put a few flecks of, you can see already that's going a bit greeny. It's really tricky to keep that pure. I think we'll get away with it in this case because it's a kind of greeny yellow flesh in this avocado. But as I was saying, yeah, I'm not just going to leave it yellow. I'm going to maybe introduce a few little flecks of that. Look at those, look at the difference between those 2. It's quite apparent. I'm going to put a few flecks of that warmer yellow in there, that chromium yellow. Anyway, I'm messing about. Let's start. Let's put in quickly. Actually, I'm going to go over the whole of this because this yellow flesh goes right into the dip. So I am whacking in a nice yellow base. And now, right, moving quickly, while that's all wet, I can maybe come in and maybe put a few little dashes of yellow in there. So a warmer yellow, just to kind of break it, because you know it's starting to discolor a little bit. And I just wanted to keep it interesting. So, like I was saying, while that is still wet, let's make up a green. So I'm going to make up a little warmer yellow there. And it is a warm olivey green. I don't want it to be a bright kind of lettuce green. I want it to be a nice warm olivey green. So I've made my yellow there. Coming in with a bit of this blue. This is Prussian blue. Let's see what happens there. You'll need a fraction of pigment of blue to yellow because the blue will overpower it. So there, one straight in there. That's turned that into quite a dark green. You see, the variety of greens you can achieve by using these 4 colors is incredible. So I'm now, let's see if I can explain that. I'm going to make a bit more yellow. And I'm going to make a green with the ultramarine, which is the warm green. Sorry, the warm blue. And look, that's made a much more sympathetic kind of olivey green, hasn't it? That's probably far closer. See how that's a blue, kind of battery acid, coppery green. And this is a much nicer natural green. Anyway, I'm waffling on, and this is starting to dry. So while this is still wet, you can see here, that's where it was wet. That's where it started to dry. And where it's starting to dry, I'm getting a hard edge. As we know, you paint watercolor onto a dry surface, it'll give you a hard edge. Whereas if you paint it onto a wetter surface, it'll soften off. So I'm going to have to quickly go in here with a damp but not wet brush and just try and encourage this hard edge to soften. because I was talking too much. And the yellow had dried, so it hasn't softened in as much as I would have liked. But you know, you get the idea. It's starting to just leach in and create that gentle, soft transition between green and yellow. This is quite nice, this project. Just practice on this one, and now we can do this one. So again, clean my brush off. Let's get this yellow going again. Take another puddle of this. That's in, just to warm it up. And now I'm going to do the same on this one, but I'm going to leave the stone unpainted because that's a different color. So I'm going to just paint around that circle in the center where the stone is. This really is just kind of filling in. Like so. And now, while this is still wet, I'm going to go in with my green around the edge. Maybe just put a few little flecks of darker yellow in there just to create variety. I've kind of failed to do that here, but it doesn't really matter. I'm just trying to recreate these little marks, these little imperfections that make it look interesting. Right, that's my lovely green that I've made here. This is the olivey green. Maybe make a bit more of that. Warm yellow. See, that's made a lovely, lovely, warm, sappy green. And then this warm blue, which is always ultramarine, as opposed to Prussian blue or cerulean blue. Ultramarine is always your warm blue. And let's just try and bring that around. And while the yellow's wet, that is going to bleed in and give us that gentle transition. And where it hits a bit of paint or paper that's already dried off, it'll, as I say, create a hard edge. So it's with a soft brush. Sorry, a slightly damp brush, just tickle that edge so that it softens. Okay, and if you get puddles like here, there's little droplets of water creating a puddle, just dry off your brush and touch the end in there and it'll suck up excess water. You don't want water standing on your paper. It takes forever to dry and it gets messy. Okay, now meanwhile, hopefully this has started to dry off and we can address some of these colors in here and some of these contours. So let's go back. I've decided I don't want this green anymore, so I'm just going to lose it. I'm just going to get rid of it like that. Clear myself a bit of space so I can start to play with these yellows. Let's make a bit more of that yellow. Now I want to start bringing it down in value, i.e. make it darker. Now I can do two things because watercolors and an additive medium, the more I put on here, the darker it's going to get till it reaches this intensity. But that's not going to be dark enough. Let me show you what I mean. If I start to paint around here, see, it will go darker, but it won't go dark enough. So what I'm doing, I'm just going to put that initial wash down. It's just my yellow again. And I'm leaving that highlight there. Can you see there's a highlight down that right-hand side? So I'm leaving that unpainted. Although I do want it to be soft edge. So you know, we all know what you do. You just go in there with a clean water brush and just wipe the hard edge. I don't know if you can see that, but that's taking it down a little bit. I want to darken this now. So traditionally, to darken a color, you add its complementary color. The complementary color to yellow is purple, and what is purple but blue and red? So I'm taking a little bit of that aside here, and I'm just going to start to add just a little bit of red and a little bit of blue. And that will start to darken that yellow. Can you see it's just taking it down? It's a little bit watery. I'm being a bit too lily-livered, I think, a bit too scared of it. Let's go down straight in there. Look, that's too much blue, so of course it's gone green. Let's counter that with some more red. Too much red, so that's gone purple. Would we agree that's a kind of mauvey purple color, which is good because we know that is the complementary color of yellow. So I can now, I think I'm done with this yellow, so I can start to use this as my shadow color. So if I start, now we're starting to get to a color that we want to use. See, I've added that purple to this yellow and it's taken the yellow down. So now I can start to put in that shadow around there. And again, I've got a bit, it's a bit liquidy. A bit too wet, so I'm going to pull a bit of that off. But now I'm kind of working, this is what they call wet in wet. So now I'm just plopping in more liquid color onto a previously wet surface, which means it's going to start mixing and mingling and blending and doing rather nice things, which is fine. I mean, the only downside is that it's getting a bit too wet, and this isn't watercolor paper, so it's not going to be as rewarding as it might be had it been watercolor paper. But anyway, you get the idea. That's starting to give us that idea of shadow. I'm going to leave that. I'm going to let that dry off, and then I'm going to come back and add to that later on. Meanwhile, let's have a look at this stone here. So, which is a brown. I'm going to dive in and maybe utilize a bit of this, but it's a much, much darker affair. So let's get in there and let's make a deeper, darker color. Look how intense that blue is. Just a tiny little peck of blue, and it's gone very blue already. But that's what we want. What we want to do is warm it up. We want to make a brown. So let's grab some of this. So what it's very easy to do is end up with colored water. And you don't really want to paint with colored water. You want to paint with paint. So it's a bit of a juggling act to try and get the right consistency. That there, look, you see that? You can almost see it's got a much creamier color, which is good because that is going to deliver a strong, intense pigment, probably too strong. So what I'm going to do first is I'm going to go in with the base color underneath all this brown. The base color is probably yellowish. So I'm just going to start off. Remembering there's a highlight there, which I'm going to leave white. I'll start off by just putting in this kind of undercolor here, like this. And while that's still wet, of course, it's nice. It's very nice painting wet in wet because you get lovely soft transitions. Now you see, while that is still wet, I don't mind that it's scrappy because you don't want a smooth billiard ball effect there. You want to show that it's got texture. It's got little ribs and veins and what have you on there. Well, I've left that white bit there. And I'm going to come in with this brown that I've created and start to introduce this around here now to really kind of build up this shadow area here. And if I want to soften edges off, you know, now that's on the paper there, I can start to tease it out and bring it around here. And I don't know if you can notice it, this is very subtle, but there's a slight lighter bit on here. It's like the light's coming down here, but something's reflecting the light back. So it's very, very subtle. There is a shine down here. Maybe if you look in your reference picture, you can see it. But to achieve that, I'm just going to pull off a bit of this pigment down here. And just lighten it up down here a little bit, like that. Now, this started to dry a little bit, and I want to intensify the shadow in here. You see, it's too light here. It needs to get down darker in here. So I could use that, but it's too warm. It's going to end up looking like the stone, which I don't want. So let's add a little bit of, let's take a bit of that, put it over there, and just hit it with a little bit of blue. And look, that kind of takes it down, it neutralizes it, makes it a kind of lovely grey. Maybe a little bit too grey. I want it still to be have a yellow tinge to it. So let's just put a bit of that in there. That's warmed it up. Sorry, not warmed it up, cooled it down, greened it up a little bit. And let's just add a little bit of that down there. And again, right on here, slightly lighter than here. It's very subtle, but so I'm just going to come down there with that. This edge is a bit hard, no problem. Dry that brush off and just soften that off down there a bit. Right. Now, there's a very, very, very dark edge around there. Let's just see if we can get that in. Let's see if we can just go in there. Just subtle, just little touches like this will make all the difference. All right, now it's not very clear on here, but all around the edge, you can see the skin of the avocado, which is a really deep, deep green, isn't it? Almost a bluey green. So let's try and get a bit of that in. But, you know, we should be able to do that now because this has probably dried off enough to be able to paint a nice, crisp, dark edge. Okay, let's see, that's kind of nice. And let's try and get that green edge in there. And it's a crisp edge. We don't want it bleeding anywhere. We just want it sitting around the edge, like that. Oops, one in the wrong one. You can see the difference between that first green that I put on, oozed in and bled in because the paper was wet. But now the paper's dry, it's staying hard. Like so. This is the kind of thing that you could do a very detailed drawing of this, spend a bit of time on it and make it really laboured. This is a sketch club. These are meant to be loose and lively. We're knocking these out in half an hour. So that's kind of looking nice. This is, let's see what we've got. Happy with the stone. The stone looks very realistic. That is not as soft edged as I would have liked. I can go back in there and I can fiddle with it a bit, I'm sure. So what are we looking at now? That stone is casting a shadow onto the flesh of that avocado, which I've not really addressed. Let's see. I think I can build up a little more tone in here. So I'm back into my yellow here. Let's make a bit more. Let's just start adding. Again, hard edges, that's half the skill of being able to create the illusion of light and shadow is being able to soften your edges. These soft edge transitions give the illusion of a curved surface. And okay, while we're here, I've got a bit of that. Let's do, see that cast shadow, that stone's casting a little faint glow around there. So I've gone in there with that. It isn't quite dark enough. So it's okay because that's kind of pre-wet, that area. And I can go in with a darker, maybe a warmer. Right, actually. Let's warm this stone up a little bit. Because with watercolor, you can glaze over the top. When it's dry, you can glaze over the top. And that means, just putting on further color like that. That's rather nice. I can even introduce a little bit of texture. I'm just going in like that. I'm using a bit of artistic license here. I mean, I'm putting texture in that isn't there, but you can do what you like when you're painting. That's made that look quite glossy, maybe a little bit too glossy, but rather nice. Okay, so we have definitely got two halves of an avocado here. But they're floating. Let's try and put them on a surface. It's hard to see here, but these are sitting on a slate or something. But there is definitely a cast shadow to the right of each of these. I'm just going to try and put those in as a finishing touch. Now, shadow. To contrast with this, it's going to be a cold shadow. So when I say cold, I kind of mean blue. So let's maybe pinch one of these redundant colors here. And let's make a decent puddle of blue. So look, very, very blue. Now that is too blue. We don't want that color shadow. We want a gray. We want more of a neutral shadow. So we neutralize that blue by adding its complementary color. Well, basically a gray or black, although you can't get a true black, a neutral gray is a combination of all three primary colors. So let's see what we can do. If we, I don't know, let's add some of this and see where it takes us. So obviously as I'm adding red, it's going to turn this blue purple. We know that. I want it to be a cool shadow, so I'm not going to go too red. I'm just going to take the blue out. So that, I don't know if you can see it, but that is going a bit purpley. I don't want to take it too far because I don't want it to get too warm, but there is a definite violet happening there. Now, to neutralize the violet, I add the third primary color, which is a yellow. So I need quite the clout of this. And that, let me just grab a scrap of paper. Now, where are we? This one. Can't really see it there, but I'm looking for a cool grey. And that is pretty bang on. You see, that's all the three combinations. That's the blue and the red and the yellow, and it's made this neutral grey, which is perfect. And I'm going to just put a bit of a cast shadow around here. And what I want to, I'm going to go in like that. And then I quickly want to soften this outside edge, don't I? So I quickly wash that brush. And then with clean water, I paint outside that shadow like that, and then come up to meet it. And that paint is running into that water and creating a gradient. You see now, and that suddenly gives that, it's suddenly seated on a surface. Let's see if we can do the same here. Let's just bring that around like that. Wash that brush out in water. Dry it off a bit. Paint outside that shadow with clean water, and then bring your brush to meet the paint, and the paint will flow into that bed of clean water that you just painted. If I want to increase the intensity of that shadow, I can go in there like that, and because this is still wet, that will leach into the wet bed. Like that. And again, because this is just a sketchbook, it's not behaving as sympathetically as watercolor paper would. If this was watercolor paper, that would carry on migrating out along that previously wet bed. Here it's kind of come to a bit of a jaggedy halt. But you know, it's all right. It gives you the impression. And it creates patterns and blooms and things that very often look rather nice. So if I were to fiddle with this now, I'd maybe, I'd maybe add a bit more blue to this and, oops, wrong one. I could maybe do a little bit more around that skin around there, make that a bit more, make it a little darker. But I'd probably say, you know, I'm quite happy with that. I think we call that done. And of course, there's nothing to stop you going back and fiddling around with this and adding a little bit more, glazing a little bit more colour, a little bit more interest and whatever you on there. Just match this up. It's the nice thing with natural objects, they're very organic and you can play and fiddle, and wobbly lines tend to look great. You don't have to get straight edges and you don't have to get everything just right. You can, as they say, get away with murder. Oops, fiddling now. But what it is important to do is just keep looking, use your eyes and just keep looking hard for, you know, the little changes in light and shade, things that look different. You know, just putting that little edge down there makes that look a little bit more three-dimensional because that edge is there. I spotted it and I put it in. All right. You know, try and balance up what you see there with what you see there. I can see that here is too light compared to there. So I could go in and maybe just try and put in a bit more value. Put that in like that, clean my brush, dry it off, and soften the edge. A little more. Little more back to the illusion of reality. And the more skilled you get, of course, the more able you are to accurately recreate what you see. That's maybe a bit too much down here. And of course, you can always lift off. There's absolutely nothing wrong with lifting off. In fact, lifting off your paint is just as important as putting it on a lot of the time. Right, I got to go. Let's call that a day. There we are, everybody. I'm going to love you and leave you because I'm going off to pick my son up from the station. It's very exciting.
Thank you very much. Great fun as always.
How'd you get on, Mike? Was it an improvement? Yes, much better. Hey, not bad at all. What do you think? Are you pleased with that? Oh, he's talking. I can't hear him. Can't hear you, Mike.
Nice, but pleased.
Oh, good. All right, everybody. You have a lovely day, and I will see you all next week. Take care, everybody. Bye, everybody. Bye, you all. Bye. Bye-bye.